While the provinces in South Africa are well into a third wave of infections, the country's mass vaccination program is certainly faltering, according to many. Plans by authorities to ramp up the vaccinations were dealt a major blow when the news that Johnson & Johnson vaccine doses would now have to be dumped. However, Acting Health Minister Mamuluku Ngubane is confident that the current phase of inoculations will not be plagued by shortages. In fact, Ngubane added that the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority has been asked to fast-track its assessment of the Chinese and Russian COVID-19 vaccines. For more on this, let's bring in SAHPRA CEO, Dr. Boitumelo Semete-Makokotlela, who joins us via our telephone line. Dr. Semete-Makokotlela, great to have you on the program. Thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. I wonder if we can start with a point of clarity. A statement from SAHPRA over the weekend has many people confused in some respects. That's because part of what was said in that statement is that SAHPRA has reviewed the data from the US FDA and made a decision not to release vaccines produced using the drug substance batches that were not suitable. There wasn't, if you like, an explicit mention of how many batches are affected and whether or not we now have to discard those 2 million doses.
No, thank you. I'm happy to provide that clarity. So basically, we had received about 3 batches, and each batch, I mean, the number of doses per batch varies, but it's anything between 1 million and 1.5 million per batch. And so we have then said that all the batches that came wherein the drug substance was made in the emergent biosolutions during the time when they were GMP non-compliant, those batches will not be released.
Sure. And what exactly was the advice from the FDA? Were they also saying unequivocally that the batches should be thrown out, or was it more advice that they can't guarantee that those batches will be safe?
So, I mean, what they provided us is the, data on these batches. But you may have seen a statement that they issued on Friday, wherein they said that, these batches need to be destroyed. And we therefore concur with them based on what we have reviewed.
Yeah. What was said in that statement from the US FDA is that, in fact, there were 60 million doses that are affected, and there are 10 million others that will be released on emergency use. But that will come with the caveat. In other words, it can be used as long as people know that they're using it at their own risk. How did South Africa ascertain whether our 2 million form part of the 60 or part of this 10?
Yeah, so I mean, there's very detailed discussions that we have, as regulators, and some of it I can't disclose. But we know the details of every single batch that's been assessed, and we obviously know which batches are in South Africa and which batches are not in South Africa. So we went through a very thorough assessment of these.
Got you. It might not necessarily be in line with what you do, but do you know if any money has been lost because of this development, at least from South Africa's point of view?
Yeah. No, I won't be able to, comment on that. I think a discussion with Janssen, the government, the National Department of Health, as well as Aspen, would then be required to adequately respond to that question.
Yeah, fair enough. There were also a separate batch, 300,000 or so. We're told that these are also Johnson & Johnson vaccines. They're meant to come into this country in the coming days, and they are specifically meant for teachers. How certain are you that that batch is not affected by the drama that's taken place at Baltimore?
No, we're quite certain. We're quite certain about that batch. As I've said, I mean, the data we've looked in goes into detail on each and every batch, and we know that these are part of the earlier batches that were not affected. After we've reviewed this data, that are not affected by these non-compliances to good manufacturing process. So we are quite confident that those ones do meet the quality requirements.
Do you know where these 300,000 batches were manufactured?
Yeah, they were also manufactured at the emergent biosolution site much earlier. This was also before they started to manufacture both the AstraZeneca and the Janssen vaccine.
Ah, I see. All right. There's obviously a whole lot of questions now about whether or not this emergent plant should be able to continue doing what they do, which is to manufacture these vaccines. It's a decision, to my understanding, that lies with the US FDA, but do you know how far they are to making a decision on whether or not production there can resume?
Yeah, I mean, they are at very advanced stages of their discussions, and they're keeping us updated. So as soon as we reach a conclusion to that, and they also reach a conclusion, we will communicate with the public.
All right. When it comes to a scale of probability, a contamination of the scale, what does it suggest to you as a regulator? Is something like this stuff that happens, or does it point to greater negligence, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, I mean, and this is why we, as regulators, play a critical role in this, because with, every site that does manufacturing of health products, we do go and we inspect that. And I think, now with the pandemic, a lot of things are, obviously in the public eye, but also, I mean, a lot of these facilities, you can imagine, had to ramp up, manufacturing to meet the global demand. So I think, it does happen, but I think the scale at which it happened in this case is a very concerning scale, but also the urgency, of the need for these vaccines, and the fact that we're in a pandemic does put then, a lot more pressure around these. But I think if I could say that the South African public must at least be confident in us as a regulator that we're able to say when a product is non-compliant, we will therefore not release it. And so we make sure that every product that is available meets the regulatory requirements. And the public must be confident that we're able to say we're not releasing those many doses, as much as we know that there is a need for such. But the public safety is paramount to us.
Yeah, there'll understandably be a whole lot more pressure now to also try and give some kind of approval, if it warrants, to the Sinopharm and the Sputnik vaccines. Those are from China and Russia, respectively. How far is that process? Because I understand it is already underway.
Yeah, no, the process is underway. And really, for us as a regulator, we focus on making science-based decisions. And so, that for us is critical. But we are at advanced stages of evaluation. We've been in discussions with the applicant, and, everything that's COVID-related, I mean, all the vaccines we've basically expedited. And that's the approach that we took, right early on in the pandemic, that every product related to COVID, we expedite the review thereof. So we are in quite advanced stages.
Yeah, it might be me putting you in a corner, but can you give a timeline of when some kind of decision might be made?
Yeah, it's a very difficult one because, again, as I say, we are in discussions with the applicants. We require data here and there. And so, it's an ongoing process of engaging with the applicant.
Sure. My question does point to another consideration to be made, doesn't it? And that's around the pressure that SAHPRA has come under over the past few, perhaps even months. Are you comfortable with the space you're still being given to do what you need to do, keeping in mind that it is a process that can take time in a context where we're in a race against time?
No, I mean, true. We also appreciate the urgency of have to receive vaccines. We understand the pressure that the vaccine rollout, national vaccine rollout strategy is under. But it is important that us as a regulator, we focus on making sure that the products are safe, efficacious, and are quality products. So we really do not compromise when it comes to the type of scientific data we require to enable us to make those decisions. And I must say, as the head of the regulator, that we haven't experienced, any undue influence. There has been an understanding that as a regulator, we have to make the decisions on our own. We do have the autonomy. And yes, the pressure is there. There is the public pressure, etc., to say we need the vaccine strategy to move a lot faster. But we have to ensure that we focus our decisions on science.
Out of interest, I mean, what other, call it, drugs are awaiting some kind of approval from SAHPRA? I mean, typically, people might think that this is all SAHPRA does, but you're a regulator across, I guess, drugs being used in the country. What else do you have on your desk?
Oh, we've got many products. We've got some new TB drugs that are coming through. We have some new HIV combination therapies that we're reviewing, but also there's a number of oncology products that have been submitted. So, I mean, as we sit as a regulator, we're sitting with thousands of applications. So we've had to dedicate a team to deal with COVID matters, but also we have a team that has to make sure that our usual applications continue to be processed.
Interesting perspective, especially at a critical time like this. Thanks very much indeed for your time. Really appreciate it. SAHPRA CEO there, Dr. Boitumelo Semete-Makokotlela, joining us there via our telephone line.